Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What is the scariest thing you've seen at night? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. While taking an ER patient by wheelchair up to the hospital ward in the elevator at 2 a.m., successfully dropped the patient off on the 3rd floor, then headed back to the elevator. I pushed the elevator button to head back down to ground floor. Elevator proceeds to take me up to the 5th floor, the very, very haunted 5th floor that is now a clinic and not open at night. Elevator doors open to reveal a completely deserted and darkened space. I felt something get on the elevator next to me. My entire body froze, with the exception of my hands that were clutching and shaking on the wheelchair handles. The elevator takes us to the 4th floor. The doors open, and once again, there is no one visibly waiting for the elevator, and I feel something whoosh past me. The doors close. The elevator finally takes me down to the ground floor. I walk with a purpose back to the ER and sit down and try to make sense of what I just saw, felt, experienced. When I was younger, my sister's boyfriend asked me to walk to the store with him because he didn't want to walk alone to it at night, and my sister was already sleeping, and he didn't want to wake her because she's moody like that. I agreed because he said he would buy me snacks. When we were walking home, the streetlights above us began to turn off as we passed them. When I looked behind us, I was met with total darkness. Looking into the dark has always unnerved me, but for some reason, I felt genuine fear when I gazed into it this time. My sister's boyfriend probably felt the same way because he picked me up and began to rush us home. The way he held me had me looking behind us, and because I felt so scared looking behind us, I just closed my eyes till we got home. When we got home, we both just kind of looked at each other. I said thank you for the snacks and went off to my room. For the rest of the night, I kept thinking if I saw anything in the shadows, but I didn't. I hoped whatever was in there, though, didn't follow us home. Me and a mate went for a midnight bike ride up a local mountain in a small bit of bushland. On the way back, we stopped for some reason and saw a creepy-ass silhouette of something coming down the road toward us. No idea what it actually was. To be honest, probably something boring, but the whole shape and gait of it absolutely freaked us both out, and we took straight off. It was vaguely humanoid, looking like long tubular arms and slowly swaying back and forth. My best approximation would be someone leaning back and forth real heavy on a bike, with hella long jumper sleeves trailing out the sides, except slow, all the motions down to a quarter. Definitely stuck with me. Some uncanny, almost human-looking things lumbering towards us in slow motion, out in the pitch dark, just out of the bush trails. I was a little kid. I don't know how old, but my life has always just been like this, so time is sort of irrelevant to me. My mom brought us to this guy's trailer in the middle of the woods, and I guess that's just where we were living for that short period. She and dude were on meth. They had meth head friends. One was named Mudman because he'd use mud water to shoot up. I was exposed to a lot of this type of garbage my whole life. This is a story about a drug deal gone wrong with Mudman. Anyway, one night I wake up to my mom snatching me out of bed and throwing me in the bathtub as everything was sort of exploding around us. At first, I didn't know what was happening. I soon realized we were in a crummy trailer with bullets whizzing through the walls, exploding everything they touched. Mom and dude were in a huge panic. He's shooting back through the windows into the darkness. Eventually, we brake for the truck. Somehow we made it to the truck, got the truck started, and peeled out down the road. They gave chase, bullets pinging the truck. It was terrifying. We made it to some civilization, and dude says we're going to his parents. The chase broke off. We made it to our destination. Somehow, some way, no one was hurt. The next day, dude goes to the truck to examine the damage, drops his own pistol, and shoots himself in the forearm. He went to the ER. His arm is aft for life. We went to examine the trailer the day after, and it looks like Swiss cheese. I have no idea how we made it. I have several stories like this. I'm severely traumatized from my childhood. Mom has since died of overdose. I have no idea how dude is doing. I'm sorry. Thank you for sharing your story. I hope you're doing well. That's a horrible childhood. I'm sorry. I was turning off the lights around the house before going to bed. I exited the bathroom and went down the hall to turn the hall lights off, and my hall leads directly in front of the kitchen, which was dark. I looked at it before reaching for the switch, before seeing a literal head peeking around the corner of my counter staring at me, like a literal disembodied head with eyes and everything, really detailed. I literally saw it for 3+ seconds before immediately reaching around the corner and slamming the light to that area on, and it was gone. It had gray, malnourished looking skin that looked really rough and just worn out, and this really gaunt face with black eye sockets and this sad expression. Problem is, recently I was told that I might be on the schizotypal spectrum, so LOL, but hey, free friends. I used to work the graveyard shift in a very old big city hospital. One part of it had been built in 1910, and in those days, the nurses wore long white gowns with long white aprons and caps on their heads. Part of that hospital was known to be haunted, and the 1910 building was no exception. Every once in a while, a patient would call the nurses' station to find out if they could talk to that really nice nurse again. I'd say, sure, which one? To which the patient would reply, oh, that one in the long white dress. I would then have to tell them that she was elsewhere in the hospital at the moment, and technically I wasn't lying. We also had the break room phone that would ring randomly during the witching hours, but no one was ever on the other end. It was always just dead silence. I used to get paged down to the morgue. Nobody ever worked in the morgue at night, but I still had to go down to answer the page. There was a ghostly pair of legs that would scoot slowly down one particular hallway using a ghostly walker. This apparition was completely silent. One particular elevator was inhabited by a benevolent entity that we called George. He ran that elevator up and down all night long, randomly stopping at different floors. The elevator doors would open, we'd all yell, "Hi, George!" The doors would shut, and he'd be off again. I used to apologize to him if I ever had to stand in his corner when we were transporting a patient via that elevator. It was always cold in his corner, and I didn't like the idea of standing on him. There was a ghost cat down in the maintenance tunnels underneath the hospital. The maintenance guys used to see it every so often, and they would always tell me if they spotted it. We also had an annoying thing that would pound on the break room door in the 1910 building at night. The hallway outside that door was long, with 0 hiding places. We would open the door, you needed a code to enter, but no one was ever outside. You would close the door, and the pounding would happen again. We learned to just ignore it. The ghost was a jerk. The one that scared the crap out of all of us lived on the cancer floor. It lurked at the end of a certain hallway and would sometimes manifest as a short, misty shadow figure. That end of the hallway always seemed so dark, like the lights were never bright enough to penetrate into all the corners. We used to go down that hall in pairs. We'd never go alone. We had 2 rooms in the hospital with call lights that would go off when the rooms were empty. One was down in the cardiac ICU, and the other was in that room at the end of the hallway. I was living with my stepdad outside of Houston, Texas. Sort of my whole family and I were dating this girl who lived in this sort of trailer park thing outside of the neighborhood, between my neighborhood and the neighborhood that we lived in. So the girl I was dating was addicted to prescription painkillers and would usually get them from her mom, who was a recovering addict, sort of. She really just traded one addiction for another, but that's, not really important. I had a bike, and she asked me to bike to where her mom was staying with her stepdad around midnight and called her mom to let her know that I was coming to get some pills for her. She knew of something I was uncomfortable with, but I didn't feel like I had a choice because it was an abusive relationship. Well, as I'm biking there, it's only about maybe a 20-minute bike altogether. I start smelling the smell that smells like rotting meat, like decay or something, and garbage. And I just could feel this sort of heavy, oppressive presence. I get to the trailer park, and to the specific trailer that her stepdad and I let them know I was there. Her mom gave me the pills and some snacks for my ex, and I was biking back. Once I got to the stretch of road where the wooded area ran adjacent to, I heard this loud sort of scream that sounded like a mixture of anguish and reach, and it didn't really sound human to me. I started biking faster, and I could hear the sound of heavy breathing and running in the wood line to the right of me in the wooded area. I got to the entrance of the neighborhood and was under a streetlight when I sort of heard the movement stop, and I looked and I could see a pair of eyes staring at me from the darkness, and knowing what the area looks like during the day, it had to be about 7 or 8 feet tall. I told my then girlfriend about it, and she believed me, but when I told my mother about it, she told me I had an active imagination. The reason why I think it was Bigfoot is because the following day I was biking to the gas station, which was a little further from my house than my ex's stepdad's trailer, and I stopped to tie my shoes at the entrance on the other side where it had been chased. So, like if you're leaving the neighborhood, The gas station and the wooded area where I was chased would be to the left. I have stopped on the right-hand side, and I saw these two figures walking through the woods that were tall and hairy, and they were walking like a couple, like one's arm was around the other, sort of near the small of the back. And when I looked up and grabbed my bike, I guess they heard me, because they both turned around at the same time, and the one that was holding the other pulled it closer and urged it to keep moving, and then they both turned around to walk further into the woods. I mean, it could be Mr. and Mrs. Bigfoot, or it could be a couple of tall hirsute hikers. I don't know. My brother and I both saw the same figure, and it freaked both of us out a lot at the time. When my little brother was a toddler, he'd babble about all sorts of things. Most of them my dad and I, didn't really take too seriously. One time, however, he started talking about the broken grandpa he saw every night. At first, we thought he was talking about having dreams about his grandpa getting hurt or something, but after some investigation, that was ruled out. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out who or what the broken grandpa was, but to no avail. Eventually, it fell out of conversation as my brother moved on to more complex thoughts. Many years later, I was going to the bathroom late at night and saw a figure standing in the doorway. An older man, maybe 60 or so, from his shadow. I, being like 12, ran screaming to my parents and had to have my dad investigate the situation before I could even be near the bathroom, and even then it freaked me out for a long time. Broken grandpa is mostly attached to the bedroom that used to be my brother's, and then my grandma's. She sadly passed away a while ago. While I slept in there for a period of a couple of months, I'd have terrible nightmares and had to crash in other people's rooms to get a decent night's sleep. In any case, Broken Grandpa is scary as shit, and I never want to see him again. When I was like 9 or 10 years old, I had a Halloween party with my cousin, my little brother, and my cousin's 2 friends. After a while being inside the house, we decided to go trick-or-treating, so we thought, why not go to the house of the dad from one of my cousin's friends, and we went there. But suddenly, 2 masked people, 2 young boys I think around 16 or 17 years old, jumped out of a corner. They wore killer clown masks and even had knives with them and started running toward us. We all started screaming and started running away, over a street. Luckily, there was no car incoming, but they just chased us. When we all told our parents, it turned out those 2 were brothers of my cousin's friends, and it was a prank. But this could have gone terribly wrong, especially for my little brother, because he was the last one running over the street since he was only 4 or 5 at this moment, so he couldn't run so fast. When I was 5, I heard a faint bang sound that for some reason only woke me. I did not look out the window and continued sleeping. Later that night, out of curiosity, I looked out the window and saw a woman that looked injured sitting on the sidewalk, rapidly looking around her, very confused. It looked like there was broken glass around her. This pretty much scared the shit out of me, but I did not wake my parents because I already woke them like 15 times that night, so I went back to sleep. Next day, I looked out the window again and saw nothing. Not a drop of blood, no glass, nothing. I did not hear any sirens later that night or anything on the news. I swear on my life, I did not make this up. When I look back, I wish I'd acted or at least woken my parents. Sure, I'll share. I've had a few things happen that I could go on about, but I'll stick to just one for now. So when I was 17, I lived in the middle of nowhere surrounded by woods. I go outside because I liked looking at the sky a lot and look up to see these lights, 4 orange ones and 1 red, all in the shape of a pentagon. It was one solid object. It had to be big, it blocked out the stars in the sky, and was darker than the night sky. I decided to get in my car and see what happened. It followed me into this little town that was a few miles out, really small, Courage the Cowardly Dog kind of town. It followed me for 6 miles. The town sheriff saw it, a few people were outside and saw it. We stared for a few minutes and it took off. Never was reported or anything. I'm 28 now. Edit. I should clarify, this object was all black with 5 glowing orbs on each point of the pentagonal shape. It moved insanely fast. When it took off in town, it was just gone. Went straight up, and if you blinked, you'd have missed it. Sorry for any confusion. In college, I worked at a music and video store that stayed open until midnight. There was this creepy dude who used to come in and harass one of the young women I worked with. One night, he was there, walking around and staring at her. At some point, he started talking to her and was being really creepy. Me and another guy sent her back to the break room and told him to get out. He left. I watched him get into his car and drive away. A few hours later, we closed and did our after-closing routine, cleaning, closing cash registers, etc. She and I got to chatting, and after a few minutes, I realized that the other 3 or 4 people had already left, and it was just the 2 of us. As I was turning off the lights in the store, I realized that the parking lot was empty, except for 3 cars back in the back of the lot where employees parked. My car, her car, and the creep's car. A bit off topic, but do you guys remember video stores? If you're old enough to, I do. And those were some of the best weekend nights. So anyway, have a good one. I was living in Vietnam, and my friend and I were on a late-night motorbike ride to a mountain outside Hanoi. Our plan was to camp on the mountain. It was a super last-minute plan, so it was about 3 a.m. by the time we got near. We were driving around the base of this small mountain, trying to figure out where to turn and such, when we round a bend, and there's a man walking in slow motion across the dark road. I'm talking jerky, slow motion, zombie style. We're both startled and swerve around him. Then we come around another bend, and there are more of them. Men and women walking in slow motion crossing the road. I'm full on panicking at this point. We are pedal to the metal driving around them and just sped as far as we could down the road before pulling over and discussing what the F we had just come upon. We decided it was probably fishermen up super early to get to work and just moving slowly. I'm sure the explanation was something boring like that, but it sure as shit looked like a whole crowd of zombies was stumbling around at 3 a.m. outside this super small, quiet, dark town.